Greek cinema has always been a relatively accurate reflection of the Greek society. A characteristic example of this is the cinematic depiction of gender inequality. Inferiority and objectification of Greek women during the 20th century were issues being faced by almost all women, but to different degrees, with the maids being the most affected by the patriarchal system of the Greek society. By looking at clips and stills derived from the Greek comedic cinema, which is a genre that often challenges the status quo, we are going to examine the treatment of the maids and how that changes between 1959 and 1967. So, who is the Greek maid? The Greek maid is usually a poor, uneducated female coming from Greek villages or the Greek islands. She would leave her birthplace to serve a wealthy family, most commonly in Athens. She is often maltreated by the male head of household. She gets insulted, sometimes hit, and in some cases sexually harassed. The only way out of her role as a maid was to get married. In order to do the latter, she had to have the approval of both the male head of the household as well as her father and brothers. This does not sound nearly as bad when considering that the maid, in order to just get out of the house, she had to have the accord of the males. Of course, being accountable to men was not maid specific. It was applicable to almost all the women of the era. The policeman of the 16th precinct, 1959. Weak and helpless. We're starting with an example that highlights the victimization of the woman and her dependence on the male figure. Here the maid serves an urban family of which the members are addicted to gambling. The maid's missus had received a gauge ring from her friend after gambling, which she later sold. When the friend is demanding to get her ring back, the maid's missus is accusing the maid of having stolen it.
Να με πει εμένα κλέφτρα, κύριε αστυνόμε, εμένα! Κύριε Αλέκα, γιατί δεν μιλάτε, μιλήστε κι εσείς σας παρακαλώ. 2 χρόνια είμαι στο σπίτι σας. Σας έλειψε ποτέ τίποτα μέσα από τα 2
χρόνια? The maid is obviously depicted as helpless and weak. This is partly indicated by her appearance with a cheap dress and the long hair. Long hair was mostly observed in women that did not have the financial means to take care of their physical appearance. Her inferiority, both because of her gender and her class, is indicated by her position in the frame. She is not the focal point, although the scene is all about her, and instead she is seen at the side, facing away from the camera. Most importantly, however, her weakness and inferiority due to her gender is emphasized by the fact that she needs her strong, manly cousin to support her and to get her out of that situation. A female, especially of this class, could never solve her problems on her own. She was always dependent on the strong male.
Τι τρέχει ρε!
Πανάγω!
Σας παρακαλώ. Σε ρώτησα να μου πεις τι τρέχει.
Πανάγω, με κατηγορούν για κλέφτρα.
Και ποιος σε κατηγόρησε για κλέφτρα?
Όλοι τους.
And the wife shall revere her husband, 1965. Insults and sexual harassment.
Πράγμα, κυρία Ελένη, παίρνω το καπελάκι μου και φεύγω.
Κουμπί.
Θέλω να κυκλωστεί γρήγορα. Θέλω να κυκλωστεί.
In this movie, the maid and her missus are both being mistreated by the latter's husband. The regular insults, such as those concerning their appearance and education level, as well as his violent character, have made them fear the man. His stance towards the two women created them the need to support each other. The maid is having more problems to deal with other than the head of household, since she is also seen being sexually harassed by her missus' brother. At many scenes, she is seen wearing the same cheap outfit, showing her poor financial state. However, because of the empathetic and encouraging relationship that the two women shared, her missus sometimes gives her her old clothes, after of course her husband's approval. A crazy, crazy family, 1965, crazy for breaking the stereotypes. One of the reasons why this family is called crazy is because of their treatment towards the maid and the latter's dynamic attitude. Here the maid is a completely different woman than the ones we saw before. She has her opinion and everybody is treating her more as a friend or a family member rather than a servant. She's a person that the family likes to hang out with, and she's even seen dancing with the family members. When a man that did not belong in the household is violent to her, she gets scared and finds it weird because she's not used to being treated like that. This maid has blonde short hair, which is most commonly seen in wealthy women. The way she's speaking, her dance, and even her posture also indicate a more dynamic woman than the ones we saw before. There is a liberation. She's wearing a shorter dress which looks like the typical Western maid clothing. However, the liberation comes along with a mild sexualization of the maid. During the same period, we see movies being released that use the liberation in different ways. By some, the liberation was mostly sexual. Hence, many comedies would over-sexualize women during that period. There were even comedies that would solely base their plot on men's attraction to the maids, with titles like All Men Are the Same. We see that their depictions are targeting the male gaze since they are shown just as an object of lust. Laura Mulvey, who very famously analyzed the theory of the male gaze a few years after the release of these movies, sees the male gaze as a characteristic of patriarchal societies and power inequality between the male and the female gender. However, others consider the liberation from a different point of view. They are interested in the promotion and depiction of strong women opposing to the maltreatment, escaping from the fate of the maid, and getting to the workforce, to jobs that were previously executed only by males. So this is a period that we start seeing more independent women that strive to be considered equal to men. But why do we see such a rapid change? During the period that the Crazy Crazy Family movie was released, cultural changes could be observed in the Greek society, mostly because of the Western influences. However, since the patriarchal culture was so prevalent, the new liberating ideas of the West were not welcomed by everyone. This is most likely because the Greek culture is a result of the mixture of the Hellenic and Romaic cultural identities as defined by Lydia Papadimitriou. Greece was often seen as a Western country with Oriental ideologies. It is obvious that whoever wanted to create movies that would touch on modernism versus tradition should be very careful when approaching culturally such an audience. What Dimopoulos, the director of the film A Crazy Crazy Family, achieved with his allegory that was previously described was remarkable. He passed to the audience ideologies and criticized the whole patriarchal structure of the society in a very indirect way that was not considered inappropriate even from the more conservative people. Dimopoulos, with his anxiety about the Greek cultural future, created films that really contributed to the society moving forward. Interestingly, this is the period during which the issue of gender inequality has been dynamically brought up for once more in many Western countries. The second feminist movement and the feminist theory were in their prime and were spreading from the USA to many European countries. Theories such as the male gaze were in fact related to the feminist film theories that were promoted during that period. It is obvious that the depiction of the cinematic maid, from our examples dating from 1959 to 1967, is signifying the patriarchic society that is challenged by the Western influences and especially the second feminist movement. This was a turning point for the Greek society that led to a much fairer but still not equal life between men and women.